The stars near the edge of human space were quiet that day. Nothing moved, except slow dust and the soft light of a dying red sun. Then, without warning, space itself seemed to tear open. A ring of blue fire spread across the dark, and out of it came ships. Not one or two, but hundreds, then thousands. The Corvath Armada had arrived. Far away, on a small patrol ship called the UNS Guardian, an alarm began to scream. Captain Sarah Chen woke from a short nap in her chair on the bridge. She had been resting for only 20 minutes, her first rest in 2 days. Her eyes opened fast, and she sat up straight. "Report," she said, her voice still rough from sleep. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was already at his station, his hands moving fast over the controls. His face had gone pale. "Captain, we have a massive contact." "Correction, multiple contacts. I'm counting." He stopped and looked at his screen again, as if he did not believe the numbers. "I'm counting over 4,000 ships, Captain. They just came out of what looks like a jump point, 6 hours from our position." Sarah stood up slowly. The Guardian was a small ship, built for scouting and patrol duty along the quiet edges of human territory. It had a crew of only 40 people. It was not a warship. It was not built to fight wars. It was built to watch and to report. 4,000 ships, she repeated. "Are you certain?" "Yes, Captain. Sensors confirm it. Ship sizes vary, but many of them are larger than anything in our fleet registry. This isn't a raiding party. This is an invasion force." Sarah walked to the front window and looked out at the stars. She could not see the alien fleet yet, not with her own eyes. It was still too far away, but she could feel it, somehow, like a coldness in the air. "Where are they heading?" she asked. Webb checked his screen again. "Captain, their course puts them on a direct path to the Needle." Sarah's stomach tightened. The Needle. Of course. Every officer who had ever served on this border knew about the Needle. It was the only safe path through the Kessler Field, an enormous belt of broken asteroids and old space debris that stretched across this entire region of space. The Kessler Field had been growing for over 100 years, ever since an old mining disaster had destroyed a small moon and scattered its pieces across 1,000 different orbits. Now it was a deadly maze of rock and metal, moving in ways that made it almost impossible to predict. Except for one path, the Needle was a narrow corridor through the field, barely wide enough for a single large ship to pass through safely. Human engineers had mapped it years ago, using decades of careful observation. It was the only quick way through the field. Any other path would take a fleet weeks, maybe months, to cross safely, and even then, many ships would likely be lost to collisions. If the Corvath Armada wanted to reach the heart of human space quickly, they had to go through the Needle. "Captain," Webb said, "should we retreat? We could fall back to Earth and warn command. We have no chance against a fleet that size." Sarah did not answer right away. She thought about the message that would take 6 hours to reach the nearest relay station, and then more time to reach Earth Defense Command. She thought about the fleet ships stationed near Earth, most of them old and few in number, not ready for a war against thousands of enemy vessels. She thought about the millions of people living on colonies scattered across this side of human space, colonies with no defenses at all. If the Corvath fleet reached the Needle and passed through, they would be inside human territory within hours. There would be no time to organize a real defense, no time to evacuate colonies, no time for anything. "Send the warning now," Sarah said. "Full data packet, fleet size, composition, course, everything we have. Send it to Earth Defense Command, and to every relay station between here and home." "Sending now, Captain," said Ensign Priya Patel from the communications station. Her fingers flew across her console. "Message away. It'll take about 6 hours to reach the nearest relay, and from there, another day to reach Earth." 6 hours, and then a full day after that. The Corvath fleet would reach the Needle in 6 hours as well, according to Webb's calculations. That meant the warning would arrive at almost the exact same moment the enemy fleet reached the edge of human territory. There would be no time for Earth to send help. Sarah looked at her small crew, 40 people. Most of them were young, fresh out of the academy, assigned to quiet border patrol because nothing ever happened out here. Nothing ever had happened out here, not in the 15 years since the Guardian had been built. This was supposed to be the boring assignment, the safe one, the one officers took before moving on to better postings. "Captain," said Webb quietly, "what are your orders?" Sarah turned back to the window. Out there, in the dark, was a fleet of 4,000 alien warships moving toward the only gap in a deadly asteroid field, a gap that led straight to Earth and every human colony beyond it. "We're not retreating," she said. Webb's eyes widened. "Captain, with respect, we can't fight 4,000 ships. We have 6 weapon systems. A single one of their cruisers could destroy us in seconds. I'm not talking about fighting their whole fleet, Lieutenant. I'm talking about the Needle." Sarah walked back to her chair and sat down, but she did not relax. She leaned forward, thinking fast. The Needle is only wide enough for one ship to pass through at a time, in single file. If we get there first, and we hold that position, they cannot get past us without destroying us first. And if they try to force their way through by attacking us, in that narrow space, surrounded by the debris field, they risk hitting the debris themselves, Webb said, understanding now. A single mistake, a single stray shot that misses us and hits the asteroid walls, could bring the whole field down around them. Exactly. They won't want to risk their fleet in a chaotic firefight inside the Needle. It's too dangerous for them, so they'll either have to destroy us cleanly, without damaging the field, which will take time and careful shooting, or they'll have to find another way through the Kessler field entirely, which will take them weeks. Either way, we buy time, said Patel. Time for Earth to get the warning and organize a real defense. That's the idea, Sarah said. We are the cork in the bottle. As long as we hold that position, this fleet is stuck. The bridge was silent for a moment. Everyone understood what this meant. The Guardian was a single small ship, and holding the Needle against a fleet of 4,000 warships would very likely mean the end of the ship and the end of its crew. Webb cleared his throat. "Captain, I want to say something, and I want everyone to hear it." Sarah nodded for him to continue. "I joined the fleet because I wanted to see the stars. I never thought I'd be part of something like this. But if this is what needs to happen, if this is what it takes to give Earth a chance, then I'm ready. I don't want to run." One by one, other crew members spoke up. Nobody argued for retreat. Nobody suggested running back to Earth and leaving the border undefended. It was strange, Sarah thought, how quickly 40 ordinary people could decide, together, to stand and fight against something so much larger than themselves. Maybe it was something in human nature. Maybe it was something about knowing that behind you, there were children asleep in their beds on 100 different worlds, with no idea that danger was coming, and no way to defend themselves. "Set course for the Needle," Sarah ordered. "Full speed. We need to get there before they do, and we need every extra minute we can get to prepare." "Course set, Captain," said the helmsman, a young man named Diego Alvarez. "Time to the Needle at full speed, 4 hours. Then we have 2 hours to prepare after we arrive." "Before they get there," Sarah said. "Let's use every second. Webb, I want a full weapons and systems check. Patel, keep monitoring the enemy fleet's movement and send updates to Earth every hour, in case the first message doesn't get through cleanly. And somebody wake up Chief Engineer Reyes. I have an idea, and I'm going to need her help." The Guardian turned in space and began its journey toward the Needle, racing an armada of 4,000 ships toward a narrow gap in a field of deadly rock. 4 hours later, the small ship arrived at its destination. The Needle looked exactly as it always had, a thin, curving path of empty space, twisting between enormous chunks of broken rock and old metal debris, some pieces larger than mountains, all of them moving slowly, unpredictably, in long, lazy orbits around each other. It was beautiful, in a dangerous sort of way, like looking into the open mouth of some enormous sleeping beast. Sarah stood on the bridge and looked at the entrance to the Needle. This was where they would make their stand. "Engineer Reyes," she said, turning to the tall woman who had just arrived on the bridge, still wiping grease from her hands. "Tell me about the old mining charges we have in Cargo Bay 3. Reyes blinked, surprised by the question. "The demolition charges? We use those for clearing debris when we're mapping new routes. We have 12 of them left. Why?" "I want to use them," Sarah said. "Not against the enemy ships directly, against the debris field itself." Reyes frowned, thinking, "You want to trigger controlled collapses. Make the walls of the Needle even more dangerous." "Exactly. If they try to force ships through in a wide formation, or if they try to go around us by cutting a new path through the debris. I want those charges ready to bring down as much rock as possible, right on top of them. A slow smile spread across Reyes's face. That's clever, Captain. Very clever. Give me 2 hours, and I'll have all 12 charges placed and wired to remote detonators. You have 90 minutes, Sarah said. That's when our unwelcome guests are supposed to arrive. Reyes nodded and hurried off the bridge, calling for 2 other crew members to help her. Sarah turned to Webb. Status on our weapons? All 6 systems are online and at full power, Captain. It's not much against a fleet that size, but every gun we have is ready. Good. Patel, anything new from the enemy fleet? They haven't changed course, Captain. Still heading straight for us. At their current speed, they'll arrive in, she checked her screen, 88 minutes. Sarah nodded slowly. 88 minutes, until the largest fleet anyone in human space had ever seen would arrive at the entrance to the Needle, and find a single small patrol ship waiting there, refusing to move. She thought about her crew. 40 people, most of them young, all of them scared but none of them running. She thought about Earth, so far away, still not knowing what was coming. She thought about every colony world beyond the Needle, every family sleeping peacefully, unaware that their entire future might depend on the next few hours. All hands, Sarah said, opening a channel to every part of the ship. This is the captain. In less than 90 minutes, an alien fleet of over 4,000 warships will arrive at our position. We are not going to run. We are not going to hide. This ship is going to sit right here, in the mouth of the Needle, and we are going to make them pay for every single meter of space they try to take from us. She paused, looking out at the stars one more time. I know we're small. I know the odds are impossible. But sometimes, one small thing in the right place can stop something much bigger. A single rock can block a river. A single door can stop a flood. Today, we are that rock. We are that door. Everyone, get to your stations, and get ready. Whatever happens next, we do it together. She closed the channel, and sat back in her chair, watching the empty stars, waiting for the darkness to fill with enemy ships. Far away, on the lead ship of the Corvath Armada, a massive vessel called the Dread Sovereign, a tall alien commander named High Marshal Draukon stood on his own bridge, looking at a small dot on his sensor screen. A single human ship, sitting directly in the path his fleet needed to take. His second-in-command, an officer named Vesic, approached him carefully. High Marshal, our scanners show only one ship blocking the passage. A small patrol vessel, nothing more. Shall I send a squadron to destroy it? Draukon studied the dot on the screen for a long moment. In 300 years of conquest, across dozens of worlds and species, he had never once seen a single ship try to block an entire armada. It made no sense. It was not a strategy. It was not even a delay tactic that could work. One ship could not stop 4,000. And yet something about it made him pause. No, Draukon said slowly. Not yet. First I want to speak with them. I want to know why a single ship would dare to stand in our way, when running would be the obvious choice. There is something strange happening here, Vesic, and I want to understand it before we destroy it. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to that ship. Let us hear what these humans have to say for themselves. Behind him, through the massive front window of the Dread Sovereign, the edge of the Kessler field glittered like a field of broken glass, and somewhere within it, waiting patiently, sat the UNS Guardian and its 40-person crew, ready for whatever was about to come. A soft tone rang on the bridge of the UNS Guardian. Priya Patel looked up from her console, her eyes wide. Captain, we're receiving an incoming transmission. It's them, the alien fleet. Sarah Chen felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. She had trained for years to keep her voice steady in dangerous moments, and now, more than ever, she needed that training. Put it through, she said. Audio and video, if they're sending it. The main screen flickered, and an image appeared. It showed a tall, thin figure standing on the bridge of a much larger ship. The alien had gray-blue skin, long limbs, and a face with 2 sets of eyes, one pair above the other. He wore dark red armor with gold markings, and behind him, other aliens moved about a bridge far bigger than the entire Guardian. I am High Marshal Draukon, commander of the Corvath Armada, the alien said. A moment later, a translation played, in accented but understandable English, generated by the alien's own translation system, which had clearly been studying human radio signals for some time already. "You are blocking the path of my fleet. This is your only warning. Move your vessel, or be destroyed." Sarah stood up from her chair and stepped closer to the screen, so the alien commander could see her clearly. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, of the human ship UNS Guardian," she said. "This passage belongs to human territory. You are not welcome here. I'm asking you to turn your fleet around and leave." There was a pause. Then, to her surprise, the alien commander laughed. It was a strange sound, low and rasping, but the meaning was clear enough. "One ship," Draukon said. "You command one ship, and you ask an armada of 4,000 warships to turn around. Human. I have conquered 11 worlds in my lifetime. I have watched fleets 10 times the size of yours surrender without a single shot fired, simply because they understood the numbers were against them. Do you not understand the numbers, Captain Chen?" "I understand them perfectly," Sarah said. "You have 4,000 ships. I have one. But you can only fit one ship at a time through this passage, and that one ship is mine, and it isn't moving." Draukon's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. "You believe a single vessel can stop an entire armada. I believe a single vessel can make you pay a very high price for every meter you try to take," Sarah answered. "The choice is yours, High Marshal. You can try to force your way through, and lose ships doing it, in a debris field that could collapse on top of you at any moment. Or you can find another path, one that will cost you weeks instead of hours. Either way, you are not simply walking through here." For a long moment, Draukon said nothing. He studied Sarah through the screen, his 4 eyes moving slowly over her face, as if trying to read something in her expression that his translation software could not explain to him. "You are not afraid," he said finally. It was not a question. "I'm plenty afraid," Sarah said honestly. "But being afraid doesn't mean running away. It just means I understand exactly what's at stake." Draukon turned to speak with someone off-screen, his voice too quiet for the translation to catch. Then he turned back to face Sarah. "I have studied your species for some time, Captain Chen. From a distance. Through old signals, your world has been broadcasting into space for over a century. I know of your history. Your species is young, violent, and divided among yourselves for most of your existence. You fought countless wars against each other, over land, over resources, over ideas. And yet here you are, a single ship, standing against an armada, speaking to me as though you believe you can win." "We don't need to win," Sarah said. "We just need to hold this position long enough." "Long enough for what?" Sarah did not answer that question directly. "Long enough," she simply repeated. Draukon's expression shifted, something that might have been respect, or perhaps simple curiosity. "I will give you one final chance, Captain. Move your ship aside, and I will allow you and your crew to leave this system unharmed. We have no interest in destroying a ship that offers no true resistance to our numbers. But if you remain in our path, I will have no choice but to remove you." "I appreciate the offer," Sarah said. "But I'm going to have to decline. This ship stays right here." Draukon studied her for one more long moment, and then, without another word, the transmission ended. Sarah let out a slow breath and sat back down in her chair. The bridge was silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. "That went about as well as I expected," Webb said quietly. "He's going to test us," Sarah said. "He won't send his whole fleet at once. Not into a narrow, dangerous passage, against an enemy whose strength he doesn't understand yet. He'll send something small first. A probe, a scouting force, something to see what we can really do." "How long do we have?" Reyes asked over the comm channel from Cargo Bay 3, where she and her team were still placing the last of the demolition charges along the walls of the Needle. "Not long," Sarah said. "Finish up down there, Chief. I want those charges armed and ready within the next 20 minutes. "Almost done, Captain. Just need to wire the last 3. Sarah turned to Patel. "Any change in the fleet's formation?" Patel checked her console, then nodded slowly. "Yes, Captain. A group is breaking off from the main fleet. Looks like 12 ships, smaller than the rest. Fighter class, probably. They're forming up and beginning to move toward the Needle entrance." "There it is," Sarah said. "Just like I thought. A probing attack. He wants to see what one small human ship can actually do before he commits anything bigger." 12 ships against 1, Webb said. Captain, even fighter-class ships, 12 against 1 is still very bad odds for us. Not if we use the terrain, Sarah said, standing up and walking to the tactical display in the center of the bridge. She studied the shape of the needle carefully, the twisting path through the asteroid field, the narrow bends and turns that a fleet would have to navigate carefully. Diego, take us deeper into the passage. Not all the way through, just far enough that we're surrounded by debris on both sides. I want anyone chasing us to have to slow down and navigate carefully, or risk hitting the walls. Aye, Captain, said the helmsman, and the ship began to move slowly forward, deeper into the winding corridor of rock. Webb, I want you ready on weapons, the moment they're in range. But listen carefully, everyone. We are not trying to destroy 12 ships in a straight fight. We're trying to make this passage as dangerous and unpleasant as possible for anyone who tries to force their way through. Every shot we fire, I want it aimed carefully. If we can knock even 1 or 2 enemy ships into the debris walls, we do double duty. We damage them, and we damage the passage itself, making it even harder for the rest of the fleet to follow. Understood, Captain, Webb said, already adjusting his targeting systems. Reyes's voice came over the comm again. Captain, all 12 charges are placed and armed. I've got detonators set up right here on the bridge, 3 separate switches, so we can bring down different sections of the field independently, depending on where the enemy ships are. Good work, Chief. Get up here and take a station. I want everyone at their post for this. A few minutes later, Reyes arrived on the bridge, taking a seat at an auxiliary console near the back, 3 small switches glowing red in front of her, each one connected to a different section of demolition charges hidden in the rock walls of the needle. Enemy fighters approaching the entrance to the needle, Patel reported. Range, 40,000 kilometers in closing. Time to weapons range? At their current speed, about 6 minutes, Captain. Sarah nodded slowly, watching the tactical display. 12 small red dots were entering the mouth of the needle now, moving in tight formation, clearly designed for speed and agility rather than raw firepower. They would be fast, hard to hit, and dangerous in a straight fight. But the needle was not a straight fight. It was a maze, and the Guardian's crew knew this maze far better than any alien pilot could learn it in the next 6 minutes. Diego, take us around the bend near Marker 7, Sarah ordered, pointing at a section of the tactical map where the passage curved sharply between 2 enormous chunks of broken rock. I want us out of direct line of sight until they're committed to the passage. The ship banked smoothly, sliding behind a massive piece of debris that had once been part of a mining station, decades ago, before the disaster that created this entire field. From here, the Guardian was hidden, at least for a moment, from the approaching fighters. They're entering the narrow section now, Patel reported. Speed is dropping. Looks like they're being careful about the debris. Good. That means they respect the danger. Webb, the moment they come around that bend and get a visual on us, I want you to open fire on the lead ship. Don't wait for a perfect shot, just get their attention and make them react. Understood, Captain. The bridge was tense and quiet, everyone watching the tactical display as 12 small dots moved carefully through the winding corridor of rock. Sarah watched the numbers count down. 30,000 kilometers, 25,000, 20,000. They're coming around the bend, Patel said. 15,000 kilometers. They'll have visual contact any moment. Webb, get ready. Ready, Captain. The lead alien fighter came around the curve of asteroid rock, and immediately, Webb fired. A single, precise energy blast shot across the gap between the ships, striking the lead fighter directly on its forward shields. The alien ship rocked violently, its shields flaring bright, and it swerved hard to one side to avoid a follow-up shot, narrowly avoiding a collision with the asteroid wall beside it. Direct hit, Webb reported. Their shields held, but that got their attention. Immediately, the other 11 fighters broke formation, spreading out and opening fire on the Guardian's position. Energy blasts filled the narrow corridor, striking the rock walls, striking empty space, and a few striking the Guardian's shields directly, making the whole ship shudder. Shields at 92%, Reyes called out. We can take a few more hits like that. Diego, evasive pattern. Keep us moving, Sarah ordered. Webb, target their engines if you can. We want to slow them down, not just hurt them. The Guardian twisted and dodged through the narrow corridor, using the asteroid walls as cover, weaving between rocks that a larger ship never could have navigated so quickly. The small human ship had been designed for exactly this kind of environment, built to scout dangerous, debris-filled regions of space, and now that design was proving its worth. Two of the alien fighters, moving too fast and too aggressively in their pursuit, clipped the edges of nearby asteroids. One spun out of control, its hull cracking open, venting atmosphere into space before it drifted lifelessly into the darkness. The other managed to stabilize, but its engines were clearly damaged, trailing sparks and debris as it fell behind the rest of its squadron. Two down, without us firing a single shot at them directly, Webb said, a note of surprise in his voice. The needle is doing our work for us, Sarah said. Keep going, don't let up. The remaining 10 fighters regrouped, more cautious now, clearly having learned the danger of getting too close to the walls. They slowed their approach, firing more carefully, trying to pin the Guardian down without risking their own hulls against the debris. Captain, they're trying to box us in, Patel warned, splitting into two groups, one on each side of that large rock formation ahead. Sarah studied the tactical display quickly. The enemy pilots were smart, she had to admit. They were learning fast, adapting to the environment, trying to use the same terrain against the Guardian that the Guardian had been using against them. Chief Reyes, Sarah said. How close are they to charge Section 2? Reyes checked her console. Very close, Captain. If they hold that formation for another 30 seconds, they'll be right in the blast radius. Then let's not disappoint them, Sarah said. Diego, get us clear, fast, away from Section 2. Now. The Guardian shot forward, breaking away from the two groups of fighters, just as they closed in on the space, where it had been only moments before. The alien pilots, confused by the sudden retreat, hesitated for a brief moment, unsure whether to pursue immediately or reposition. That brief moment of hesitation was exactly what Sarah had been waiting for. Chief Reyes, now. Reyes's hand came down hard on the second switch. A massive explosion rippled through the rock wall beside the two groups of alien fighters, and tons of broken asteroid debris, some pieces the size of small buildings, broke free and began tumbling into the corridor, directly into the space where the enemy ships were still gathered. The rock wall came apart in slow motion, the way large things often do in the silence of space. Enormous chunks of debris broke free and began drifting into the corridor, tumbling end over end, and for the alien fighter pilots, there was almost no time to react. 3 of the 10 remaining fighters were caught directly in the falling debris. Their pilots tried to pull away, engines flaring bright as they attempted evasive maneuvers, but space debris does not care about engines or piloting skill. 2 of the ships were struck hard, their hulls crumpling like paper under the weight of rock that outmassed them 100 times over. The third managed a narrow escape, clipping only its outer wing, but the damage sent it spinning wildly out of control, alarms flashing across its cockpit as it tumbled deeper into the debris field, lost from the fight entirely. On the bridge of the Guardian, the crew watched the tactical display in stunned silence for a moment, before Webb spoke. That's 5 down, Captain. 5 out of 12, and we still haven't taken any serious damage.
Don't celebrate yet,
Sarah said, though she allowed herself a small breath of relief. They still have 7 ships out there, and now they know exactly how dangerous this place really is. They'll be more careful. She was right. The remaining 7 fighters pulled back immediately, forming a tighter defensive formation and retreating to a safer distance, well away from the unstable walls of the corridor. For a moment, everything went quiet. The enemy ships hovered at the edge of weapons range, clearly reassessing their situation. They're pulling back to regroup, Patel reported. Looks like they're holding position, probably waiting for orders. Sarah studied the tactical display, thinking fast. This pause would not last long. The Korvath commander would want a report on what had happened here, and he would need to decide his next move quickly. Everyone, stay sharp, Sarah said. This isn't over. If anything, it's about to get harder. Sure enough, a few minutes later, Patel's console chimed. Captain, incoming transmission. It's High Marshal Draukon again. Put him through. The screen flickered on, and this time, Draukon's expression was different. The mild curiosity from before had been replaced by something colder, more focused. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with quiet urgency. Captain Chen, Draukon said, you have destroyed 5 of my scout fighters and heavily damaged another. I admit, I did not expect this. Your species is more resourceful than I anticipated. I did warn you, Sarah said calmly. This passage isn't going to be an easy walk for your fleet. So it seems. Draukon's 4 eyes narrowed slightly. Tell me something, Captain. In my 300 years of conquest, I have fought against dozens of species. Most surrender the moment they understand the size of the force against them. A few fight bravely for a time, then surrender, once real losses begin. Your species is different. You are still fighting, even though the numbers remain the same. 4,000 ships against your 1. Why? Sarah thought for a moment before answering. Because giving up doesn't actually make the danger go away. It just means you're not fighting back while it happens to you. My planet has a long history, High Marshal. We've fought wars against ourselves for thousands of years. Over land, over food, over ideas we couldn't agree on. Somewhere along the way, we learned something important. Sometimes the fight matters more than the odds. Sometimes standing your ground, even when you can't win outright, changes what happens next. Draukon was silent for a long moment, studying her. You speak of history as though it explains everything about your kind. Perhaps it does. My scholars have studied your broadcast signals for decades, Captain. We have watched your old recordings, your histories, your wars. Your species destroyed entire cities in your conflicts with each other. You built weapons capable of ending your own civilization, and yet you never used them fully against yourselves, though you came close many times. There is something troubling about a species so capable of violence, yet so careful about when to use it. We learned the hard way, Sarah said. A lot of people died learning those lessons. We'd rather not repeat them, but we also won't forget them, especially not when something like your fleet shows up uninvited at our door. An interesting philosophy, Draukon said. But philosophy will not save your ship, Captain Chen. I am sending a full battle group next, not scouts. 30 warships, properly armed and prepared for the terrain you have shown us. You have proven your point. There is no shame in withdrawing now. I appreciate the concern, Sarah said, but the answer is still no. Draukon's expression shifted again, and for a brief moment, something almost like sadness crossed his alien features. Then I am sorry for what comes next, Captain. You are a worthy opponent. It is a waste that our first true encounter with your species must happen this way. The transmission ended. Sarah sat back in her chair, feeling the weight of what was coming. 30 warships, properly armed, prepared for the terrain. This would not be like the fight with the 12 fighters. This would be much harder. Status report, she said. Full damage assessment, weapons, shields, everything. Shields are back to 98%, Captain, Reyes reported. The self-repair systems handled the damage from that last fight well. Weapons are fully charged and ready. Charges remaining in the field? 10 out of 12, Captain. We used 2 already. Sarah nodded slowly, thinking through their options. 30 warships was a very different problem than 12 fighters. Warships would be tougher, better armed, and their pilots would likely be far more experienced. The Guardian could not simply outmaneuver 30 capital ships the way it had outmaneuvered a handful of fast, lightly armored fighters. We need a new plan, Sarah said, standing and walking to the tactical display. We can't outfly 30 warships the same way we handled those fighters. They'll be slower, but much tougher, and they'll be more careful about the debris after what happened to the first group. What about the remaining charges? Webb asked. Could we bring down a much larger section of the field at once? Something big enough to block the passage entirely? Sarah considered this. It's an option, but if we seal the passage completely, they'll just find another way through eventually, and we lose our position here. I want to weaken them as much as possible, not just delay them. What if we let them get partway into the corridor? Reyes suggested. Then trigger a collapse behind them, as well as ahead of them. Trap a portion of their fleet inside the passage, cut off from retreat, and then pick them apart while they're stuck. Sarah's eyes lit up. That's good, Chief. That's very good. If we can trap even 10 or 15 of their 30 ships inside the corridor, cut off from support, in a space where they can't maneuver freely, we could do serious damage before they figure out how to break free. It's risky, Webb pointed out. If we're caught in the same collapse, we could be trapped right alongside them. Then we need to time it perfectly, Sarah said. Diego, I want you studying the layout of this corridor like your life depends on it, because it does. We need an escape route, somewhere we can retreat to once the charges go off, someplace safe from the falling debris. On it, Captain, Diego said, already pulling up detailed maps of the needle's twisting passages. Over the next 20 minutes, the crew of the Guardian worked quickly, preparing for the coming battle. Reyes rewired the remaining 10 charges into 2 separate groups. One set positioned to seal the entrance behind any ships that entered deep enough into the corridor, and another set positioned further ahead, ready to block their escape or crush them if they pushed forward too far. Diego mapped out a narrow side passage, barely large enough for the Guardian to fit through, that would let them slip away from the main corridor once the trap was sprung. Enemy warships approaching, Patel reported, breaking the tense quiet. 30 ships, moving in formation, entering the outer edge of the Kessler field now. Time to the needle entrance? About 15 minutes at their current speed, Captain. They're moving slower than the fighters did, more cautious. Good. That gives us time to finish preparations. Sarah turned to her crew. Everyone, listen carefully. This fight is going to be harder than the last one. 30 warships is a real force, and they'll be ready for the tricks we used before. But we have something they don't have. We know this passage better than anyone alive. We've mapped every turn, every wide spot, every narrow bend. We're going to use that knowledge, and we're going to make them regret ever entering this corridor. The bridge crew nodded, faces tense but determined. Sarah looked around at each of them, these young men and women who had signed up for quiet border patrol duty, and instead found themselves facing down an alien armada. 15 minutes, Patel said. Sarah settled into her chair, watching the tactical display as 30 enemy warships slowly approached the mouth of the needle, moving with far more caution than the fighters had shown before them. They had learned from the deaths of their comrades, and now they would be careful, patient, methodical. But caution, Sarah knew, could be turned into a weapon too. A cautious enemy was a predictable enemy, and predictable enemies could be lured exactly where you wanted them to go. Diego, take us to position marker 12, Sarah ordered. Deep enough into the corridor that they'll have to commit fully if they want to reach us, but close enough to our escape route that we can pull out fast when the time comes. The Guardian moved silently through the winding passage, sliding between towering walls of ancient broken rock, deeper into the heart of the needle, toward the position where the next battle would be fought. Behind them, in the vast darkness of space, 30 Korvath warships began their careful approach into the corridor, unaware that they were walking directly into a trap built by a crew of 40 humans who had decided, against every reasonable expectation, that they would not simply step aside and let an armada pass through their door. The 30 Korvath warships moved into the needle in a long, careful line, spaced far apart from each other, engines glowing a dull orange in the darkness. Their commander, a battle-hardened officer named Fleet Captain Norsik, had studied the reports from the destroyed fighter squadron carefully, and he was not going to make the same mistakes. Keep formation tight, but spaced, Norsik ordered from the bridge of his cruiser, the Iron Talon. No ship gets closer than 200 meters to the walls. I don't care how slow that makes us. I will not lose ships to falling rock. On the Guardian, hidden behind a large formation of debris near marker 12, Sarah watched the enemy formation on her tactical display, studying the careful spacing, the slow, methodical advance. They've learned, she murmured. No bunching up this time, they're staying well clear of the walls. That makes our first trick harder to repeat, Webb said. It does, but it doesn't mean we're out of options. Sarah studied the map again. The corridor ahead narrowed sharply at a point called Marker 15, a natural bottleneck where 2 enormous chunks of ancient debris nearly touched each other, leaving only a tight gap barely wide enough for a single warship to pass through at a time. If they want to keep their spacing and stay away from the walls everywhere else, they'll have no choice but to slow down even further right here, and pass through one at a time. A perfect place for an ambush, Reyes said. Exactly. Diego, get us positioned just beyond marker 15, tucked behind that large formation there. I want to hit the lead ship the moment it clears the bottleneck, before the others behind it even know what's happening. The Guardian moved into position, engines running as quiet as possible, hiding in the shadow of a massive piece of broken rock. The crew waited, watching the tactical display as the long line of Korvath warships slowly approached the narrow bottleneck at marker 15. One by one, the enemy ships began passing through the tight gap, forced to slow to a crawl and align themselves carefully to avoid scraping against the rock walls on either side. It was exactly the kind of vulnerable moment Sarah had been hoping for. Lead ship is clearing the bottleneck now, Patel reported. Webb, target their engines the moment they're clear. Full power. The instant the lead Korvath warship slipped free of the narrow gap, Webb fired. A concentrated blast of energy struck the ship's rear engine section directly, and the vessel lurched violently, sparks and debris spraying from the damaged engine housing. It was not destroyed, but it was crippled, drifting now, unable to maintain formation. Direct hit. Their engines are offline, Webb called out. Immediately, alarms began sounding across the Korvath formation. Norsec, watching from the Iron Talon several ships back in the line, cursed and ordered his fleet to halt. They're firing from ambush. Return fire. All ships. Target that human vessel. But the Guardian was already moving, sliding back behind cover, before more than a few return shots could find their mark. The narrow, twisting corridor made it nearly impossible for the larger, less maneuverable Korvath warships to get a clean shot at the smaller, faster human ship. Shields at 91%, Reyes reported. A few of their shots got close, but nothing serious. Diego, take us to the next position. Marker 18, Sarah ordered. Keep us moving. Don't let them get a fix on our pattern. For the next 20 minutes, the Guardian played a deadly game of hit and hide, striking at individual ships whenever they became vulnerable, then retreating deep into the maze of rock before the rest of the formation could respond effectively. It was slow, careful, dangerous work, but it was working. One by one, Korvath warships took damage. Engines were crippled. Weapon systems were knocked offline. None of the ships were fully destroyed in this phase of the fight, but the fleet was being worn down, ship by ship, hit by hit. Then, on the bridge of the Iron Talon, Fleet Captain Norsec made a decision that changed everything. Enough of this, he growled. Full formation. Converge on grid section 7. If that ship wants to hide in the rocks, we will bring the rocks down on top of it ourselves. All ships, target the debris formations at coordinates I am sending now. Fire everything. On the Guardian's bridge, Patel's console suddenly erupted with warnings. Captain, they're changing tactics. They're not targeting us directly anymore. They're firing on the debris formations all around our position. Sarah's blood went cold. They're trying to bury us. The tactical display lit up with dozens of weapons fire markers, all converging on the massive rock formations surrounding the Guardian's current position. The enemy had realized that if they could not hit the small, fast-moving human ship directly, they could simply collapse the entire section of the debris field around it instead. Diego, get us out of here, now. Emergency thrust. Any direction, just move. The Guardian shot forward just as the first wave of enemy fire struck the surrounding rock formations. The explosions were massive, far larger than anything Reyes's small demolition charges had produced. Enormous sections of ancient debris shattered and broke apart, sending a wave of rock and metal fragments cascading through the corridor in every direction. Hold on, Diego shouted, wrenching the controls hard to the side, as a piece of debris the size of a small building tumbled past, close enough that the crew could feel the shockwave through the hull. Shields at 70% and dropping, Reyes called out. We're taking hits from the debris itself. Get us to the side passage, the one we mapped earlier, Sarah ordered, gripping the arms of her chair as the ship shuddered violently around her. Diego fought the controls, weaving the Guardian through a storm of tumbling rock, threading needle after needle of narrow gaps between debris that had, only moments before, been part of the stable walls of the corridor. It was the most dangerous flying any of them had ever attempted, and for several long, terrifying seconds, it seemed impossible that the ship would survive. Then, finally, the Guardian burst through into a narrow side passage, clear of the worst of the collapsing debris field. The ship shook one final time and then steadied, alarms still blaring, but slowly quieting as the immediate danger passed. Status, Sarah gasped, her hands finally releasing their white-knuckled grip on her chair. Shields at 52%, Reyes reported, her voice shaking slightly. Hull integrity holding, but we took some real damage that time. Minor hull breach in the lower cargo section, already being sealed. Anyone hurt? A few bruises down in engineering. Nothing serious, Reyes said. We got lucky, Captain. Sarah nodded, taking a moment to breathe, before turning back to the tactical display. What she saw there made her sit up straight. Patel, what's the status of the enemy fleet? Patel checked her console, then her eyes widened. Captain, the collapse. It didn't just come close to us. Look at this. The tactical display showed the aftermath of the massive debris collapse, and it was staggering. In their attempt to bury the Guardian, the Korvath fleet had triggered a chain reaction throughout an enormous section of the Kessler field, far larger than anyone had anticipated. Massive chunks of debris had come crashing down, not just around the Guardian's former position, but across a wide stretch of the corridor, where several of the slower-moving Korvath warships had still been positioned. Captain, I'm reading at least 6 enemy warships caught directly in that collapse, Patel said, her voice full of disbelief. 2 appear to be completely destroyed. The others are showing heavy damage. Some are trapped, unable to move. Sarah stared at the display for a long moment. The enemy's own attempt to destroy the Guardian had backfired spectacularly, costing them far more than any careful attack from the human ship ever could have. They panicked, Webb said quietly. They got frustrated, and they made a mistake. A costly one, Sarah agreed. She turned to the comm station. Patel, any communication from the enemy fleet? Yes, Captain. Incoming transmission. Priority channel. It's High Marshal Draukon. Put him through. The screen flickered on, and this time, Draukon's expression was unmistakably different. Gone was the cold confidence from before. In its place was something closer to genuine anger and frustration. Captain Chen, he said, his voice tight. My fleet captain Norsec has just cost me 6 warships and dozens of lives in a foolish attempt to bury your vessel under rubble, and instead, buried a portion of his own formation. I have relieved him of command. I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah said, and to her own surprise, she found she meant it, at least partly. War was never something to celebrate, even when the other side had brought it to your doorstep. Draukon studied her for a long moment. You continue to surprise me, Captain. 30 warships, and you have crippled or destroyed nearly a third of them, while your own vessel remains largely intact. I have fought many wars, against many species, and I have never encountered resistance quite like this, from a force so small. We're not trying to surprise you, High Marshal, Sarah said. We're just trying to protect our home. And you will continue trying, no matter the cost? Draukon asked, though it sounded less like a challenge now, and more like genuine curiosity. Yes, Sarah said simply, we will. Draukon was quiet for a long moment, his 4 eyes studying her carefully. There is a saying among my people, Captain Chen. A single stone, in the right place, can turn aside a river. I did not believe it could apply to a starship until today. He paused. I am bringing forward my flagship. If a single vessel can accomplish what your ship has accomplished against 30 warships, then I must see for myself what stands against my entire armada. Prepare yourself, Captain. What comes next will be far greater than anything you have faced so far. The transmission ended, and Sarah sat back in her chair, watching as, far in the distance on her tactical display, a massive shape began moving forward from the heart of the Korvath fleet. The dread sovereign itself, larger than anything the Guardian had yet encountered, was coming. Chief Reyes, Sarah said quietly, how many charges do we have left? 8, Captain. We used 2 on the first attack, 2 on the trap at marker 15. Get them ready. All of them. I have a feeling we're going to need everything we've got. The dread sovereign moved through the outer edge of the Kessler field like a mountain given the power of flight. It was easily 10 times the size of any ship the Guardian had faced so far, its hull bristling with weapon batteries, its shields glowing faintly blue as it advanced carefully into the mouth of the corridor. On the Guardian's bridge, the crew watched its approach in silence. That thing is bigger than some of the space stations back home, Diego said quietly. Focus, Sarah said, though she felt the same unease. Size doesn't matter if it can't fit through the tight sections of this corridor. Patel, what's our read on its dimensions? Patel checked her scans carefully. Captain, it's too wide to fit through marker 15, or several of the other narrow points we used earlier. It looks like it's going to have to stop well short of our current position and send smaller ships ahead, or try to force a wider path by continuing to destroy sections of the debris field. That buys us a little more time, Sarah said, though she knew it would not buy them much. Even now, more of the Korvath fleet was gathering at the edges of the field, dozens more warships forming up behind the flagship, waiting for their chance to advance. She looked at the tactical display, then at her exhausted crew. They had been fighting for hours now. Shields were down to 52%, and while Reyes's team had made emergency repairs, the ship was not what it had been when this battle started. Everyone on the bridge showed the strain, tired eyes, tense shoulders, the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from hours of sustained fear and focus. "How long has it been since we sent that warning to Earth?" Sarah asked. Patel checked the timestamp. "A little over 5 hours, Captain." 5 hours. If the message had reached the relay station on schedule, it would have arrived there roughly an hour ago, and from there, continued toward Earth. It would still be many more hours before it reached Earth Defense Command, and even then, organizing any kind of meaningful response would take time the Guardian might not have. "Captain," Webb said suddenly, "I'm picking up something odd on long-range sensors. Multiple contacts, approaching from the direction of the relay station." Sarah's heart jumped. "Identify them." Webb worked his console quickly, his brow furrowed in concentration. Long seconds passed, feeling far longer than they truly were. "Captain," he said finally, his voice filled with disbelief, "I'm reading human transponder codes. It's a fleet, Captain. A big one." "How is that possible?" Reyes asked. "We only sent the warning 5 hours ago. There's no way Earth Command organized and dispatched an entire fleet that fast." Sarah's mind raced, and then understanding dawned on her. They didn't dispatch anything new. This has to be the third border fleet. They've been running exercises out near the Kepler relay station for the past 2 weeks, remember? It was in the briefing before we left on this patrol. "That's right," Webb said, checking his data again. "The third fleet, 22 warships, was scheduled for exercises in this exact sector. They must have picked up our warning directly, without needing to wait for it to relay all the way back to Earth first." Hope, sharp and sudden, rose in Sarah's chest. "Get me a clear channel to that fleet, now." It took a few minutes, but eventually, a new face appeared on the Guardian's main screen, an older man with gray hair and tired but alert eyes, wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral. "Captain Chen," the man said, "this is Admiral James Torres, commanding the Third Border Fleet. We picked up your distress signal a little over an hour ago. I have to say, Captain, when my communications officer told me a single patrol ship was holding off an alien armada at the Needle, I didn't believe it. Now that I'm looking at the tactical data from your sensors, I still barely believe it." "Admiral, it's good to see friendly faces," Sarah said, relief clear in her voice. "We've held the position, but we're running low on resources, and the enemy just brought their flagship forward. I don't know how much longer we can hold alone." "You won't have to hold alone much longer," Torres said firmly. "We are approximately 40 minutes out from your position, moving at maximum safe speed, 22 warships, fully armed and ready. Hold that position just a little longer, Captain, and we'll finish this fight together." "Understood, Admiral. We'll hold." The transmission ended, and Sarah turned to her crew, a fierce, tired smile spreading across her face. Did everyone hear that? A ragged cheer went up across the bridge, quiet but genuine, the kind of relief that comes only after hours of believing help might never arrive. 40 minutes, Sarah said. "We just need 40 more minutes." But 40 minutes, she knew, would not be easy. The Dread Sovereign was still advancing, and behind it, the rest of the Korvath fleet was regrouping, preparing for what would likely be their most determined push yet. Sure enough, moments later, Patel's console chimed again. "Captain, incoming transmission from High Marshal Draukon." "Put him through." Draukon's face appeared on the screen, and this time, there was no mockery in his expression, no cold confidence, only weary respect, and perhaps something like resignation. "Captain Chen," he said, "my sensors have detected a large fleet approaching from your side of the field. Reinforcements, I assume." "That's right," Sarah confirmed, seeing no reason to hide the truth now. 22 warships, 40 minutes out. I'd suggest you use the time wisely, High Marshal." Draukon was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, I want you to understand something. My Armada came to this region for resources, for territory, the same reason we have expanded into 100 other systems. We did not come expecting resistance, certainly not resistance of this kind. In 300 years, I have never lost this many ships, attempting to secure a single passage. Then maybe it's time to reconsider whether this passage is worth it, Sarah said. Draucon's eyes studied her carefully. Perhaps it is. Tell me honestly, Captain. If my fleet withdraws now, will your people pursue us? Will this become a war that follows us back through the stars? Sarah thought carefully before answering. This was not a question to answer lightly. I can't promise you anything about what my government decides, High Marshal. But I can tell you this. We didn't come looking for a fight. You brought 4,000 ships into our territory, uninvited. If you turn around and leave peacefully, I believe most humans would rather see this end here than see it grow into something much bigger and much bloodier for both our peoples. Draucon considered this for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Your species is strange to me, Captain Chen. You fight with a ferocity I have rarely seen, and yet you offer peace, even now, even after everything my fleet has cost you. Most species I have encountered, once given the advantage, take everything they can. You are different. Maybe that's the point, Sarah said. We fight hard when we have to, but we'd rather not fight at all, if there's another way. Draucon nodded slowly, a strange, thoughtful expression crossing his alien features. I will discuss this with my council. Withdrawal is not a decision I can make lightly, not after the losses we have already suffered. But I promise you this, Captain. I will consider your words carefully. The transmission ended, and Sarah allowed herself a small, tired breath. The bridge remained tense, everyone watching the tactical display as the minutes ticked slowly by, the massive shape of the Dread Sovereign still looming at the edge of the corridor, and behind it, the reformed lines of the Korvath fleet, waiting. 30 minutes passed in tense silence, the Guardian holding its position, weapons ready, shields slowly recharging, as Reyes's engineering team worked without rest. Then, finally, Patel's console lit up again. Captain, I'm reading movement from the enemy fleet. Sarah sat up straight. Report. Captain, they're pulling back, all of them. The Dread Sovereign is reversing course, and the rest of the fleet is reforming into a withdrawal pattern. A wave of disbelief and relief swept across the bridge. Sarah stared at the tactical display, watching as, one by one, the massive shapes of the Korvath Armada began turning away from the needle, retreating back toward the jump point where they had first arrived. A final transmission came through, this time text only, brief and formal. Captain Chen. My council has agreed. This territory is not worth the cost your people are willing to make us pay. We withdraw. Perhaps, in time, our peoples will meet again, under better circumstances. Draucon, High Marshal of the Korvath Armada. Sarah read the message twice, hardly believing it was real. Then she looked up at her exhausted, battered crew, 40 people who had faced down an armada of 4,000 ships, and had, somehow, against every reasonable expectation, won. They're leaving, she said, her voice thick with emotion. They're actually leaving. The bridge erupted into cheers, relief and joy and disbelief all mixing together as the crew of the Guardian watched the alien armada retreat from human space, back through the jump point they had come from, until finally, the last ship vanished, and the stars beyond the needle were empty and quiet once again. 20 minutes later, Admiral Torres's fleet arrived at the scene, 22 warships sliding into formation around the small, battered patrol ship that had held the line alone for so long. Torres himself appeared on the screen once more, looking out at the damaged but still standing Guardian with clear admiration. Captain Chen, he said, I have been in the fleet for 30 years, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like what you and your crew accomplished today. One ship, 40 people. You held off an armada that could have swallowed an entire star system, and you did it without losing a single member of your crew. We had a lot of help from the terrain, Admiral, Sarah said modestly, though the pride in her voice was impossible to hide entirely. Terrain doesn't fire weapons on its own, Captain. That was skill, courage, and quick thinking, from every single person on that ship. Earth is going to want to hear about this, all of it. In the weeks that followed, the story of the Guardian spread quickly across human space, from Earth to the farthest colony worlds. A single small patrol ship, standing against an armada of 4,000, had bought enough time for reinforcements to arrive, and had done it with such skill and determination that the alien fleet had chosen retreat over continued losses. Captain Sarah Chen and her crew became known throughout human territory, not just as heroes, but as a symbol of something deeper, a reminder that size and numbers did not always decide the outcome of a fight, that sometimes courage and cleverness could hold a line that logic said could never be held. Far away, in Korvath space, High Marshal Draukon reported his losses to his own council, and included in his report a warning that would be remembered for generations among his people, that the small, young, fractured species called humanity, so recently discovered, so seemingly minor in the great scale of the galaxy, should never, under any circumstances, be underestimated again. And on the edge of human space, near a narrow, twisting passage through a field of broken rock, the UNS Guardian sat quietly under repair, its crew resting for the first time in days, having proven, in one long and impossible day, that sometimes it truly does take only one determined ship to block an entire fleet.